Okay, so we will be doing a watercolor artwork, um, and welcome the spring, which is already started, and I'm hoping it's going to be nice and sunny and bright from now onwards. Um, so something that we always love to see around the house, or if you're thinking of creating an artwork to gift to someone, maybe a birthday. It's hard to go out and buy stuff these days. Um, and yeah, something happy and colorful, cheerful, and that's what we're going to draw. So flowers, lots of colorful flowers, and then a vase. Now, uh, we'll be using watercolors today. I'll move my camera towards the stuff I've got here so you can see the supplies. Okay, so I am using, um, okay, I'm using these Mon Mud colors. You can find these everywhere in the dollar shops. And yeah, I couldn't go anywhere else to the art shops to get stuff, but these work fine. Good colors. Um, so I'm using these colors for the session, and then you can see here I've got my palette. I've got just a kitchen towel to soak my brushes, some tissue papers, a tester. Sometimes you need to test if the right shade and tone is there for you. And my pencil just to draw. And then I've got my brushes, whatever brushes you have will work. And then 2 tumblers of water. Now, when I do my watercolor sessions, I tell all the students it's very, very important to have two, one for the light, one for the dark. Otherwise, you'll find yourself running to the sink to change the water every now and then. We don't like interruptions when we are doing creative stuff, isn't it? So that's pretty much it. I hope you can see my screen clearly. Let me know at any point of time if you're finding it hard to hear me, or if you can't see anything clearly. All right, so we shall start now. I have got, this is a watercolor paper that I'm using. Once again, it's just a simple one that I got from a $2 shop, 180 GSM, nothing fancy. It's got a good grainy texture in it, which I love when I'm doing my watercolor artworks. And then I've just pasted the paper with these masking tapes onto a piece of board so it doesn't warp as much. When you put water on paper, it just tends to warp. You all know that. So we're just trying to prevent that. And it's also easy to put your colors in. All right, let's get started. Now, if you are watching and doing at your end, then you can do this. You can have the paper in portrait or in landscape, however you like. I have it in landscape, um, but it's up to you. Now, first we will be drawing the vase and then we'll add flowers. So with the vase, it can be a vase around the house that you have or a different kind of vase, different shape. There are different shapes of vases, okay? You can go traditional, you can create your own. So I'm thinking because I have um, this in the portrait, sorry, in the landscape mode, I'm thinking of having a vase, maybe could have a circle, or I could have like a conical jar. Let's try and make a conical jar. So that's the mouth of the jar. And then I'll make my pencil marks a little bit deeper so you can see. Okay. don't worry about the pencil marks. You can rub them off once your painting dries. Some artists also like to leave the pencil marks. I personally like to leave the pencil marks. So up to you. At the end of the drawing, if you feel, nah, it's not looking good, you can always erase it. Okay. So that's how the jar looks like. Like I said, you can change the shape if you want. I'm thinking if I should add a handle. Maybe I should. Let's try and add a handle and see how it looks like. Okay, pretty fancy. All right. Now I'm going to erase some of the extra lines that I have in this space and also erase the lines inside the jar or the vase, and I'll leave the rest. And because I've got watercolor paper, if I press my pencil too hard, it leaves a lot of marks on the paper. It's very grainy, so the pencil kind of tends to erode quickly. So that's the thing when you're using these watercolor papers. All right. So yeah, not a very typical vase, different shape. Now we're going to add the flowers. Now you can add whatever flowers you want. I'm going to add just very random flowers here and there. We will try to make it look busy, beautiful, colorful. Okay, so I'm going to start somewhere here. Now the shapes of the colors won't be that defined. When I'm using my watercolor, you will see once I apply the color, it will be very, very casual, a little bit messy, but beautiful and colorful. That's the style I like. All right. So it won't be very defined, and you also don't have to make the flowers look very defined. All right, so let's add the petals. I'm going to add some here. And maybe I can add another one here. Imagine you're looking at a bouquet or a vase of flowers. You will see different levels, isn't it? They're not at the same level. So you have to create some at the back, some in the front, some hiding behind some leaves. And then we can have like a sunflower here. You don't see the stems as much unless they're sticking out too long. So I'm not going to make too much of the stems. And then some leaves here. Some more flowers here. And then let's see, maybe we can add a few more. Let's add another one here. There's no right or wrong when you're drawing a bouquet of flowers or a vase of flowers. Just make sure they look balanced, and that's it. Okay, and then let's see. Yeah, we can have maybe another one here, a small one. And some leaves here. All right, that's it. Now I will erase some of the pencil marks inside the flowers, just so I can apply my colors smoothly. All right, let's start painting. Okay, so I'm going to first color the vase, and then I will start with the flowers. Now for the vase, let me see, maybe we can use a blue vase. I'm using this sort of a blue. It's called a cerulean blue, just a bright blue. You can use any blue you like. All right, now when you are working with watercolor, before you apply the colors, pick up a little bit of water in your brush, in a flat brush. I've taken a flat brush like this, and then just glaze the surface. It's easy to glaze the wider areas. It's harder to glaze smaller areas like the inside of the flowers. That's fine if you can't. The bigger areas like this, just glaze it so it's easy for you to apply the paint. Just a little bit of water and glaze it. As if you are buttering the baking pan before putting the batter, something like that. Okay. All right. I'm using the blue very, very lightly. My brush has a lot of water. I'll just glide over the surface of the vase. Now, don't worry if your paint goes out of the pencil line a little bit. In watercolor, casual mistakes are sometimes done intentionally. And I like that style. So I'm going top to bottom, just because that's the texture I would like. And I've also applied more paint on my left-hand side part of the vase compared to the right. Okay, I'm just switching to a wider flat brush, so it's easy for me to apply the paint. One more thing when you're using watercolor, apply the paint as quickly as possible because they dry up. Once they dry up, they leave a mark. It's very hard to fix the mark unless you apply a dark shade over it, it's really, really hard to fix that mark. All right, so I'm going inside those little corners or those interior parts just behind the leaves and adding shades there, just a deeper shade of the blue. And now I'm going to distribute it all over the vase. Okay. I'm adding some shade down the bottom of the vase. And also in the corner. That's it. All right. Let's allow that to dry and move on to the flowers. Okay, for the flowers, if you are seeing my drawing, you'll see there are some sunflowers, which will be the lightest in color, the yellow. And now there are some of these flowers, I don't know what name, yeah, what type of colors they are, but whatever it is, I'm going to use some orange shades on it. And then I've got these ones with the fluttery petals. I am going to use maybe some red on it. Okay. The reason why I'm telling you what colors I'm going to use, because I will start with the light color and then I will progress with the deeper colors. So I am using some yellow. This is just a lemon yellow that I'm using. And I'll start with the sunflowers. Very casually, I'm adding lemon yellow to those areas. You don't have to think about going outside the line. I keep telling you this because you will feel like you're making a mistake, but you're not. Okay, and then also in these, in the other flowers with the fluttery petals, I will add some lemon yellow. And when I'm adding the yellow, there's a lot of white space that I'm leaving. With yellow, it's hard to see. That's why I'm explaining it to you. The colors are not very defined. Bring it closer. So I'm creating a base for my orange to go on. All right, so there were 3 of those fluttery flowers and 2 sunflowers, and I've added the lemon yellow to it. Now I will take some orange. If you have too much water in your brush, make sure you soak it before you apply on the paper. Otherwise, it will take a lot of time to dry. And when it dries, it will leave a mark. Okay, so I've got a little bit of orange and I'm using just a basic vermilion orange. If you have a lighter orange, that's fine. Okay, and with the orange, I will color the fluttery flowers, but I'm just coloring the tip of those flowers. If you have a thin brush with a narrow tip like mine, it will be easy for you to apply the paint. If you're using a flat brush, it might be a little bit difficult for you, but use the corners of the flat brush if you don't have a thin brush like mine. As you apply the colors, because watercolor is a very transparent medium, when I started the class, I mentioned that you don't have to bother erasing the pencil marks. So once you start applying the colors, you'll see, even with the pencil marks, it looks wonderful. That's a different style and gives the painting a very casual, happy texture. This is the last flower, and that's it. I'm just dabbing my brush onto the tips. And when the excess water accumulates, it just creates a pretty texture. Okay, that is done. Now we let that flower, those 3 flowers actually, to dry, and we will move on to the sunflowers. Now we've added the yellow to the sunflowers. The color has dried. We'll add a second coat. So I'm taking the same lemon yellow and just go over the first coat. Okay, so that looks brighter. Now for the center of the flower, I will take a bit of brown. So I'm taking this sort of a brown. It's called burnt umber. So it's not a terracotta brown. It's like a dark chocolate brown. Okay, I'm taking the brown and I'll apply in the center of the flower. I'm not applying on the whole area. I'm just applying a little bit towards the center. That's it. Okay. If you can see, there's a little bit of white everywhere, wherever I'm applying the color. Just so the light reflects on it. Sometimes when you're using watercolor, it is wise to leave or use the paper white to create light areas in comparison to the dark areas. Because with watercolor, it's such a transparent color, it's hard to use white. You can't use white. The only place you need to use white is to create a lighter shade. Otherwise, there is no usage of white, unlike other mediums like acrylic or oil paint. All right. Now I'm going to move on to these flowers. And I will use red for it. Okay, so I'm going to use a very light layer of red, and then once it dries up, I'm going to add more detailing. So this is a crimson, uh, deep red, not the orangey red. This has an undertone of blue. And I'm diluting the color, the paint, with a lot of water. So when finally applied on the sheet, you'll see it looks like kind of pink. Okay, so as you can see, it kind of looks like pink. When you're going in between the petals, just be careful, because if the surface is not dry enough, then it will pick up the color that you're applying. So if you think, no, that area is not dry yet, you can just move on to another flower. Okay, moving on to the next one. I'm using small circular strokes with my brush. If your brush is wet enough, you'll be able to mimic this pattern that I'm trying to create. It just gives you a flat wash of color. And because the petals are roundish, that's why I'm using small roundish movements to cover the whole area. Once again, I'm leaving some areas, not coloring it. Just for the light to reflect. All right. So that is done with the pink flowers. Next, I'm taking green for the leaves. Now I have a dark green like this, which has a little bit of blue in it. And I also have a light green like this, okay? I will mix the light green with the dark green, because the light green is quite fluorescent, I would say, which I don't want. But the dark green is also a bit blue, I would say. And I want something in the middle. So I'm creating those, I'm just mixing up those colors. Let's see. Yeah, that looks quite right. Okay. Going along the leaves, Now this is just the first wash of color. Once it dries up, I will apply more shade to it. And then there will be some leaves in here in the middle as well, which you can't see much, but it is there. If you look at a vase or a bouquet of flower. Some going in between the sunflower leaves, the sunflower petals, I would say, not the leaves. Okay, and that's how it looks like. Okay, now I'm adding a little bit of more green in middle, just in this white space, just to show that there are more leaves in there. We'll let that dry. It's almost done with its first layer. Now, in the meantime, while the flowers dry, we'll work a little bit more on the vase. So I'm adding a wash of blue for the handle. Just like so. And I'm picking up some more paint for a bit of more detailing. So just in here where the handle is joined to the body of the vase. Wherever you need to add detailing, just make sure you use less water so you get that nice deep shade. Okay. So I'm picking up more paint at the tip of my brush to do the detailing. And then once I've applied the paint, I'm going back to picking up some water and I'm mixing a little bit of paint in it. So to create a smooth graduation of a lighter shade coming from a deeper shade. Otherwise, it will just look like you've added color to it, but it's not quite smooth and distributed. So you have to make it look like it's shadow and it's not design. All right. So that finishes the handle. Now I've got navy blue in my box. That sort of a blue, a navy or an inky blue. I'm taking a teeny tiny bit of that. To darken up the blue. You could use black as well if you have black. Just make sure you don't apply too much of black. Black and blue will result in a dirty kind of blue. If you're happy with that, that's fine. Otherwise, use a light blue. Okay, now in the corners and in the areas which is going behind the petals and the leaves, I'll add some of these dark blue shade. You may have already applied some of the blue, like I did for the first layer. So this is the second layer. And I'm going to add some here as well. Once again, when you're doing delicate areas like this, try using a thin tip. If you don't have a thin tip, use the corner of your flat brush. Otherwise, it's really hard to go inside those narrow areas. Follow the shape of the vase as best as you can. Okay. Now I'm going to switch to my flat brush and distribute this color. I'm also taking my flat brush to add a bit of shade towards the bottom of the vase, just here. Still using the dark blue and dragging the color up. When you're applying watercolor, or for that matter, any color, imagine the vessel or imagine the subject on which you're applying color. Your brush stroke should mimic the shape of the vessel or the subject, especially when it comes to bigger areas like this one, like a bath. Okay, almost done. Just adding teeny tiny bit of color there. And that's it. All right. I will do my last few touch-ups for the flowers. So I'll start with these ones where I applied a lighter shade of red to create a pink. So I'm taking red and I'll go over the surface. Just like this. And the pink kind of pops out from behind. Just like that. And when I'm applying the second layer of red, I'm following the shape of the petal. Just like that. Now either at the center of the petal or towards the edges, you can leave some more color to create a shade like I'm doing. And then when the color dries, it will create a beautiful mark. Just like that. So when the color dries, the areas where the water has accumulated will look darker and create that deep kind of area, and will make it look like it's just the darker section of the petal. So sometimes instead of using dark shades, you can also let the water, not too much of it, just the right amount of water accumulate in a certain area, and it will create a beautiful shade there. Okay, moving on to the leaves. So I'm using just the dark green. Remember, we mixed up the light green and the dark green, but now I'm just using that dark green. Okay, just making sure this area has dried up. Yep, looks like it has. And then applying a second layer of dark green on the petals. Now, when I'm applying the second layer, I'm not going over the whole petal here. I'm just applying along the edges, a little bit along the tips, because you still want to show the beautiful green that you applied. If the leaves are patchy, you can create a patchy effect with the green, the dark green if you like. If you want to use the dark green um, to create the veins of the flowers, you can do that. Just make sure you're using the right brush. Just like so. I applied a little bit of water in this first leaf that I colored, and I'm just lifting up some of the dark green. I feel I can expose more of that light green that we did. Okay. So continue for rest of the petals. Apply the dark green towards the joint or where it is coming out from behind the flowers. And then wash off the dark green. Just take a little bit of water and spread it around. Apply the green wherever you feel it is close to a subject, so, or close to a flower. Moving to this one here. Just the last few. And then going inside, in between the flowers. Just do your best in here. Can't see much. Whatever you can see, apply. There is no right or wrong. Okay. I'm picking up a little bit of that brown that I use for the middle or the center of the flowers. And I'm adding some brown to these ones. You can use black as well. Just here. Some of the centers may not be very visible. So yeah, just apply a little bit. And I'm taking a little bit of black as well. I haven't added any water to this black. And I'm creating a definition with that black. Basically just tracing the circles, the little centers in the flowers. And for the sunflowers, I'll just add a few dots with the tip of my brush. Once again, there is no water added. It's just paint. And I'm adding more dots towards the left and less as I go right. Let me just bring the camera a bit close so you can see. So that's how the centers look. Okay. Okay. Now, there are some stems that are often visible. So I'm trying to add a little bit of brown just here. There was some extra water, so I just lifted that up with the tissue paper and I'm add just some subtle strokes of brown. To show the stem. And some here as well. Just wherever you feel a stem may have gone through, you can apply a bit of brown. It may not be very defined, the application, which you can see, just a little bit here and there. Okay. There is one teeny tiny area here where I feel color may have gone missed, so I'm just fixing that up. Just here. And a little bit here. Okay. So that finishes the vase. Now for the backdrop, you can, I'm erasing those extra lines. Okay, now for the backdrop, you can, yeah, you can add whatever you like. I will just add a bit of just some texture, I would say. So this is how I'm going to add the texture. I'm taking a flat brush and some water in it. And I will quickly glaze the surface. Very quickly glazing the surface wherever it is white. And you can take whatever color you like. I'm just taking that lemon yellow mixed with some orange to create a light orange. And I'll add just random strokes like that. And distribute around. Just to create very vague backdrop, which you can't really make out, but you know there is something there. You can leave it white if you like as well. If you are planning to frame it, yeah, just yeah, think of the frame that you have. If you have a white frame, maybe add some color. If you have a black or any other color, then you can leave it white. So just like that, you can keep adding more until you finish. Just adding more here, a little bit here. Any color is fine. And just distribute it around. Okay. All right. And that is it. So I've added very messy application here, just to create a vague, shabby background for the bus. And that is it. I just have to let this dry a little bit. When you are working with watercolor, let stuff dry before you apply fresh color. Yeah, sometimes you won't be able to make out if the painting will look quite right if you apply a new shade or not. So yeah, always let one stage of it dry and then apply something more. Yeah, you can write something up the top once it dries. You can add more color. You can create a bit of shade. Yeah, work on it with Sharpie, uh, create patterns. There's just a whole lot of possibilities. You can, once this part dries, you can also use any black texture or Sharpie to create a design if you want. Yeah, and make it look however you like.